Full and Bloom interview with vocalist Don Dokken. Be sure to listen to our other interview with Don at fullandbloom.com. Click the link in the description. Also, as I explained in the last upload, we've launched a brand new clips channel on YouTube, Fib Clips. Fib is in Full and Bloom. We'll no longer be posting the short clips, the 2 to 5 minute clips on this channel. If you're a fan of those shorter highlight excerpt videos, be sure to subscribe to that other channel. There's also a link to that page in the description. It didn't sound like yesterday you really wanted to talk about any of the updates on Dokken, and of course I can't use any of the shit from yesterday anyway, so if you want to plug anything, like as far as the album, I know yesterday you were saying that you finished your vocals, or at least the majority, or any idea when that would come out, or do you want to talk about that?
It'll probably be out maybe October, and I'm working on a box set with Rhino Warner on a Dokken box set maybe before Christmas as well.
Right. That ought to be cool. You know, I was sitting there thinking that you and Rat are another one where I don't recall a lot of remastering. Have any of them been remastered? Maybe Tooth and Nail?
Some of them were in England, but most of them not. I mean, we just like to go forward, not backwards. I thought they were fine the way they sounded.
Oh, definitely. Often I don't like the way that they usually put too much high end or something in the remastered. So I'm one of those.
It's popular now. They put that 800 on there and just bottom down to 100, 120. I'm like, well, why would this is a hip hop record? Come on.
And as far as yesterday when we talked, you said you didn't know if they were going to do vinyl with the box set.
I know they're putting out Dreamwares on vinyl.
I would think as popular as vinyl is, man, that would be great to do some multicolored Dokken and all that. But
that's not the label.
So what I would love to talk about is that we kind of do a tribute to Michael. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So then how did you meet Michael Wagener?
I was invited to do a club tour in Germany by Michael Boyens, and he owned a big club in Hamburg. It was on like 4 floors up. And he booked us at all these clubs that the Beatles used to play in their early days, the Top 10, the Chicago Club, and the Star Club. And so we went to Germany and did like a run because at that point in time, rock started dying. I mean, Van Halen snuck out and took off big, but everything else turned into like the Knack and pop and Devo, and rock just kind of died in Hollywood, and people don't realize. Everybody talks about the rock scene, but it died for several years. And it was just punk and new wave. So I just said, well, we're not in vogue. So I'm looking at bands like Saxon and Judas Priest and all these bands, Deep Purple and Scorpions, and I said, let's go to Germany. So we did. And Michael worked at a studio called Tennessee Ton Studios, which is ironic because he ended up moving to Tennessee. And so, I met him, and he came to the club and listened to us and said, you guys are really good. And he decided to run a bunch of cables, like 100 feet of cables across from the studio to the club, and recorded some of our live shows, which ended up on the lost tapes that came out.
Right.
6, 7 years ago.
And then from there, he records the Don Dokken version of Breaking the Chains.
Right. Then I got a deal on Carrera Records. 2 years later, I was actually invited by Dieter Dierks to go sing some background vocals on the Scorpions album Blackout because I had a high voice and Klaus had some vocal issues. So I just did some very grunt work, harmony stacking. And the woman that was managing Accept at the time was in there recording also, Gabby Hauke, and she took my demo to Carrera and I got a record deal.
Oh,
I came back and gave me a plane ticket. So.
Wow. Yeah, Gabby. I mean, she wrote all the lyrics to those great Accept records.
Yeah. So Gabby got me the deal, so I have to give her a lot of kudos because without her, I wouldn't probably be talking to you right now. So Gabby got me the deal, and the problem was it was me. I didn't have a band. So, and I remember I came back to LA, and I knew George and Jeff from the band The Boys, and, I was looking to get a drummer. And that kind of really pushed me along to take George too. And I said, oh, okay, because I was the lead guitar player at the time. So I said, all right. So we went back we rehearsed in LA, I auditioned him. We all flew back to Germany with another bass player who didn't work out. I sent him home. And Peter Baltus ended up playing the bass tracks on the whole record on Breaking the Chains.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Peter played the bass tracks.
And so that's not Juan?
No, it was on the album, but something happened. I can't really go into that. He just couldn't get on his flight. He missed it, and his passport went MIA. And I said, look, we only have a certain amount of time in the studio. I can't wait. So Peter cut the bass. And we came back, and, then the album came out as Don Dokken. breaking the change. George went back, Mick went back, everybody went their separate ways. And I just tried to, keep going. And then I finally, the album did really well in Germany. And then Cliff Bernstein from Q Pilots seen the album on an import and bought it, liked it, called me, said he wanted to manage me. And the rest is history, And then, they wanted to remix the album. And, then after Scorpions, I said, well, Dieter did me a solid, so I'll cut my album in Dirt Studios. So Michael and I drove in his car back to Cologne, a little town called Stammler, and Michael did the album. And so we did Breaking the Change together. And I came back to America, and then I said to Michael, I think you'd have better luck in America because you're really a good engineer and you're smart. You know what you're doing on a console. He had really good ears. He's a musician. And so Michael came to America and slept on my couch for a while.
Last time we talked, I told you I was just like watching some old school Dokken videos while I was putting together the interview, and I came across that one where you guys were playing, it looked like for a TV show, and Juan was on bass, and you were just ripping a killer guitar solo.
You got lucky. The Beat Club, everybody from AC/DC to Queen to Deep Purple played the Beat. That was kind of like the German version of MTV. And it was a live concert series, and how that record company pulled off us having our own 1 hour concert, and nobody ever heard of us. So George and Juan and Mick, we went back to Germany, did the TV show, did a tour there, hit the clubs, freezing our ass off in the winter. And it was rough. It was cold. And we pulled it off, spent Christmas there. We couldn't even go home for Christmas. And we all slept in hostels. And, we started out like everybody at the bottom. Came back to America. George left the band. Juan left the band. Joined Rat. So it was down to Mick and I. Signed my deal with Elektra. And then I got Warren DeMartini in the band for a short time. And George said, I want to come back in the band. And so that's, the rest is history.
That's incredible. Yeah, there's an old school picture with you and Warren and Mick holding the Don Dokken solo record.
Right. Warren was in the band, and that's what it's going to be. But, somehow, Rat started to take off. So Juan and Warren decided to go stay with Rat.
Which is kind of cool because I always considered those two, out of all the guitar players, there's not many that I compare, but I always compared, or at least when I was a kid, I thought of Warren and George as kind of the same in some way.
Yeah, Warren's a shredder, and I think he picked up a lot of chops from George.
And so when you're taking George in, I'm assuming you guys don't even get along at that point, but you're just taking him in basically because of how badass he is?
He was a great guitar player. I knew that. We didn't get along. I knew that. He's alpha, I'm alpha. So it was kind of like trouble from day one, but, we just kind of kept chugging along because the band kept getting more and more and more popular. And then we landed our first arena tour in America with Bloister Cold and Aldo Nova, and then the rest is history. Actually, Breaking the Change didn't sell that well. It only sold 100,000 copies. That album didn't go gold for 4 years until On Rock and Key was almost double platinum.
So it did go gold, huh?
Yeah, it went gold. Because once the people were buying Tooth and Nail and On Rock and Key and Back to the Attack, our fans were wanting all our stuff. So they went back and started buying Breaking the Chains.
Do you have any memory of writing Breaking the Chains?
Yeah, I just remember we were put into the little tiny studio down in a cellar. It was called the C room, the tiny little room. We were crammed in there, just Michael and I. And the record was about half done, and George and Mick left and went home. Then I was like, oh shit, now what am I going to do? I got to finish the record by myself. So I did. Finished up the guitars and a couple solos, and Michael and I and Peter cut the bass in one day, and Michael and I just sat there by ourselves and mixed it. Crazy times. I really can't talk about all the debauchery and all that. Michael used to drink Southern Comfort. I think I used to drink rum and cokes. And we'd go out, and bring girls back to the studio and have fun.
Oh, nice. Now, I know you mentioned that you left L.A. because the rock scene was kind of dead there, but you were there kind of in that beginning phase before the scene even launches in the 70s with your band Airborne. Do you have any memories of Van Halen or Quiet Riot from back then?
I played with Van Halen quite a bit. I have a flyer. It was the show was a 2-night show to start with Van Halen, Quiet Riot, and Dokken. And those were Randy Rhoads' last 2 shows with Quiet Riot because he just joined the Blizzard of Oz. Farewell shows. Great parties afterwards between Van Halen, Quiet Riot, and us, man. And Judas Priest was hanging out there. It was called the Starwood. That was a way.
Sure.
And I remember Kiss guy sitting up there, and it was that was the place to go more than the whiskey. The Starboard was the place. Had an upstairs private balcony overlooking the stage, and you just couldn't get up there unless you was somebody or knew somebody.
What about Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads? Any stories stand out involving them?
I remember playing with Van Halen at a place we down a beach called the Fleetwood. And I remember I was a lead guitar player. This is before the Dokken days, before I got signed. And I just remember I was a lead guitar player and the lead singer. We were a three-piece, basically. And the first time I saw Van Halen, I just looked at Eddie and I just thought, I don't know what the hell he's doing, but I'll never be that good. And I started thinking, I'm just going to switch to singing because I just knew I couldn't compete. And then that night afterwards, I remember it was really late. I think he was driving a van and everybody had left and he's packing up his gear and he had a flat tire. And this is before the days of cell phones and all that shit. And we're on the beach. The club was on the beach, basically, across the street from the marina. And I remember I said, well, what do you want to do, So I had like 2 rolls of duct tape and I duct taped his tire like about 6 times around and got some air in it. And he hobbled off home. I was like, wow, he made it. Great loss. Losing Eddie was like losing Hendrix. It was horrible. I cried for days.
What about David Lee Roth? Any story with him?
All I remember about David Lee is David Lee was famous before he was famous. And his persona, was like that from day one. Very gregarious and animated and the ringleader and the circus leader and the guy with the tigers, that's the way he was, he's very flamboyant. And then I remember, that's like 1979. And then exactly 9 years later, I'm playing with Van Halen and Dokken on the Monsters of Rock tour. So Eddie and I used to sit up late at night because by then he had Wolfgang and I had my son Tyler, and we smoked and we drank. And so we'd go out in the stairwells, because we couldn't be in the room with the kids. And we just sit up and talk guitars and amps and about how in the hell do we get from the whiskey to here, to stadiums.
Speaking of the Monsters of Rock tour, George came out. I don't know if you saw that last month, and he had talked about that it was a time where the label, you were going to renegotiate the contract, and it was a big payday coming up, and you wanted to get rid of the entire band and to take all the money for yourself. But when I read that, I just thought that wasn't what you told me. You told me, basically, you told the other guys, let's just get rid of George and get somebody else.
Yeah, I just said I can't work with George anymore. It had nothing to do with Jeff and Mick. They, Mick grew up with George, from school. So he went with George, and Jeff wanted to strike out on his own and form his own band and become a lead singer. And so the band just dissolved. But this whole thing about take everything on my own, that was stupid because we got a record deal on Monster Rock. The president of the record company came out and gave us like $1 million for a live album. So we got the advance, split it 4 ways. There was a lot of smack talking from George for many years about I was greedy and I always wanted the money. And I said, look, the deal is 4 ways, so there's nothing greedy about it. I get $1, you get $1, Jeff gets $1, Mick gets $1. And that's the way it always was, and it still is now. Royalties, publishing, everything's 4 ways forever and ever and ever in perpetuity. So I don't know why he thought, I want to take the money and all that. So what money? I can't. It's a 4-way split. So we did the Beast in the East instead of a studio album because I said there's no way I can go in the studio with George and make another record. I won't survive it. I won't. I'll have a nervous breakdown. So I left. How often does a person that forms a band leave their own band?
But I thought you bought them out at some point.
Years later. I lost my name. They sued me and they took my name, Dokken, away. And I said to the judge, why don't you sue my father and my grandfather and my great-grandfather? It's my name. I'm entitled to it. And the judge didn't see it that way. And so I had to call the Geffen album Don Dokken. And that really hurt that record because people saw it as a solo album and it really wasn't. And I had this amazing all-star band I put together. Peter Baltus, John Norum, Billy White, Mickey D.
Of course,
we were a smoking band and a great record. But, people buy Bon Jovi, not John Bon Jovi. People bought Van Halen, not Eddie Van Halen or David Lee Roth Van Halen. When you put your name, your surname in the front, people just perceive those records as solo records. And I knew if I lost my name, I was in deep shit. So, years go by. I do the Don Dokken thing. I strike out on my own. Took a few years off. And then all of a sudden, Jeff wanted to come back. Mick wanted to come back. And then we did Dysfunctional, signed to Columbia. And the 11th hour, the album was completely done. And George wanted to come back for obvious reasons. So he came back and he did a few solos and some rhythms, and that's the end of that. But basically, that album was written by Jeff and me.
And what about Up From the Ashes? Did that one sell okay?
It did all right. It stalled right before Gold. David Geffen said, it's too bad it wasn't called Dokken. You probably would have done 2 million because I was riding high. But that didn't happen.
Under Lock and Key with, as far as when you go in, now I know of all the issues, we talked that last time with Tooth and Nail, and of course I told you with Tom Werman, I had interviewed him and he told me all the shit that happened, and then you told me, but as far as with Michael Wagener, now you go in to record Under Lock and Key and you have Neil Kernon in there as well. Is it the same kind of situation where George was like, no, you can't just have Michael because he's going to jack your vocals up?
Yeah, he thought he'd make the vocals too loud or something stupid. And it was the same way on Tooth and Nail. We had the other producer, Werman. Yeah, and so I said, okay, how about we bring in Michael? Because they thought he's in my camp because we're best friends. So they had Roy Thomas Baker kind of come in the studio and babysit all of us. Is
Michael just kind of doing your vocals? And is it the same kind of situation where you were showing up at night and the band was during the day or whatever?
Yep, they work in the daytime. When they'd leave, go down to the Rainbow to snort coke, I'd go in the studio and sing.
So that just continued even through like Back for the Attack?
All the way to the bitter end.
Neil's overall producing the record, and then Michael's just working with you on Under Lock and Key?
Yeah. And then Neil did...
he did Back for the Attack by himself, right? Neil Kernon?
No.
Oh.
No, he wasn't involved with Back for the Attack.
You sure?
They engineered, but the guys that mixed were called Thompson and Barbiero, and the mixing team.
Oh, the Tesla dudes?
Yeah, so Nicola came in. Neil started the album, and Michael finished it because I think Michael finished it because Neil was having some personal problems, or he kept going MIA, as he's on the phone a lot with the family shit, and it just was, and George and Neil were at each other's throats all the time. So think about Michael. Michael's got a thick skin. He doesn't wound up about crazy people in a band,
He seems like he's real nice. I think Mark Kendall was like, he was just hilarious to kind of work with, a real funny guy.
He's very funny, always laughing, always kidding around. So he made the studio environment very pleasant. And plus, Mike and I being good friends, he knew me, he knew how I sang, he knew when I was having a good night, a bad night, and he just kind of pushed me along and just say, try this and try that, okay, let me try this. And Michael and I basically did all of that stuff together. And then when the whole album was done, I think Jeff and Mick came back in and they did the backing vocals, and then we mixed it,
But Michael's recording some of the guitars and some of the instruments?
Oh, yeah. I think he did all the solos.
So George got along with Michael?
Yes. Everybody gets along with Michael, and no matter what George was doing, Michael wouldn't take any shit from him.
And so when you're cutting vocals, I'm assuming you're doing what everybody at that time was doing, which was kind of comp the vocals. Did you typically like to sing the song from start to finish, and then you would kind of comp from there?
We do a couple runs at it, and then we start comping and punching what wasn't good enough. And you got to remember, this is before the days of auto-tune and Melodyne, and bands now, they just sing the song once, and then they walk out of the room and tell the engineer to fix it. And you had to get it right, period.
When I was putting this together, I came across an old clip of you guys on the Under Lock and Key tour, and you, goddamn, dude, you just sounded exactly like the record. Now, I saw you on the Tooth and Nail tour opening up for Dio, but I was a little kid back then, so I'm not sure I truly appreciated. I think at that time, I just assumed everybody could sound like they did on the record.
Yeah, I was lucky. Well, I got to remember I was young, man. I turned 30 on the Dio tour. I remember that. Because Ronnie threw me a birthday party. I turned 30 on the Dio. So you got to remember I was really young, and my voice was fresh, and I was hitting my peak, and I had a good run. I can't sing that high anymore. I don't think anybody can.
And so how do you look back on Under Lock and Key nowadays, like compared to the other Dokken albums from the 80s?
It was probably the one record that we actually all got along.
Even though you recorded separately from the band?
Mm-hmm. But that started years before. That became the standard.
Was the getting along part on that album just mostly due to the kind of new success?
Probably. You got money and you're buying houses. And
Of course, yeah.
And getting famous, and it might smooth your feathers a little bit. Or sometimes it makes it worse. Sometimes, and I know a lot of musicians, the more famous they got, the more arrogant and pompous.
And so you were saying the other day that you wrote basically all that album under lock and key?
Most of it. Yeah,
okay.
A lot of it, maybe 80%. And the band realized that it was going to be Don Dokken, written by. So you look at the credits.
Which says just Dokken.
Yeah, all songs written by Dokken and Dokken, because they didn't want my name on, every single song. That was their solution, to just put all songs written by Dokken, and Dokken is, that was kind of stupid, but egos, man. Egos.
Yeah, man, but that album came out like a year later. Are you writing on the Tooth and Nail tour like every night, or?
Everybody was. They had their studio. Jeff and George had a studio, and they'd haul it up to the hotel room. After the tour, I came home, and I just had a little 8-track recorder, and I just started hitting it hard.
Oh, so that whole album was written after you get home, pretty much.
Most of it, and George and Jeff wrote a lot of songs too on the tour. So they wrote, I wrote, everybody just wrote, and then Tom Zutaut was the one that decided what went on the record and what didn't.
Okay, and then pretty much just picked 80% of your songs, huh?
And he didn't know. The same problem. They said, you're friends with Tom. Tom and you were buddies, and he's going to be favoring you. And I said, gosh, how about the best songs make it on the record? So we just fed the songs to Tom, and he picked them.
And you said you had written In My Dreams, so you even wrote that guitar riff and everything?
Wrote the entire song sitting on the beach with a bottle of tequila in Puerto Vallarta.
Lyrics and everything all in one shot, or you hammered the lyrics out later?
It was done in an hour.
Is that always the case, typically, in your experience? The big hits are kind of done quickly?
Yeah, the big hits are done quickly, and the ones, for sometimes you labor on it for a week, and because you're trying to turn shit into ice cream, and sometimes it doesn't work. But I can't get into the spiritualness of it, but when you're inspired, you're inspired. After having a world tour under our belt and gone to Japan and experienced fame, I just wanted to get home and get back to it.
Anything stand out from The Hunter or It's Not Love?
Well, The Hunter, we were rehearsing at Burbank Studios, and George came in the studio and I had this song, and it was The Hunter music, and he said, this is going to be my instrumental on the album. And I said, I don't get it, because the song's kind of slow and medium tempo. And I said, George, don't you think, if you're going to do a solo, it should be like a rip-roaring, up-tempo, double bass, in-your-face song so you can shred? And he says, no, I want to do this song, because George likes that medium-tempo stuff. So I said, well, I don't agree, so let me just take the music home. I recorded the rehearsal and took the song home and wrote The Hunter.
And you typically wrote all lyrics, right?
Yes. It's hard for me to sing other people's lyrics. And
when you write, you basically, do you come up with the melody first and then kind of hammer in words, maybe get a few words from the gods? And
I don't remember. I really don't know the process. I get inspired, I write, and then when I get stuck on a bridge or a lyric, then Jeff participates. He'd step in and write a verse and say, well, how about do this on the bridge? And then Jeff would step in and kind of smooth it all out.
And anything about It's Not Love?
No, I didn't really write that song. That was their song.
And what about doing any of those videos for The Hunter or In My Dreams or It's Not Love? Anything stand out from any of the videos?
Yeah, they're really expensive and a waste of money.
Like $250,000 back then, right?
Yeah, Mick goes, wow, we go and make a record and for $150,000, and then we go and make a video in 2 days, and it's $250,000. I was like, what the hell? We were spending more money on the videos than we were on the record. It was ridiculous. You can spend all the money you want on a video, but at the end of the day, guess who's paying it back? We are. Instead of our royalties, it's not a freebie. Record companies are banks. They don't give you shit. They just give you a loan.
Right, like super high interest loans.
Oh, yeah. Like we make $1 per record, and they make 10. They take all their money back first, and if it's all paid back and you have success, then you start getting money.
But then you have to pay that debt back with your dollar royalty, right?
Right. And by the time we made, money, by the time we had all made $1 million, the record company had made like $30 million.
Where was that video film for It's Not Love?
Hollywood, Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard. All I remember, I thought somebody's going to fall off the truck and get killed. And it's a flatbed. It wasn't exactly comfortable. It was bouncing around and we're jumping around. And if you look at the video, Mick had that cage and I was hanging onto that drum cage for dear life while I was singing.
What about Lightning Strikes? Anything stand out? Was that a song written by them? That was a pretty heavy track, almost tooth and nail-ish.
I don't remember. I think that was a collaboration, all four of us.
Okay. And
with the music, and we all just sat down and started putting pen to paper.
And so last question, what was it like working with Neil Kernon?
It was great. I mean, he's a great producer and button heads with George, and I felt bad for him. And Neil was pretty stressed out through the whole project and just threw up his hands toward the end, and Michael stepped in to finish it.
And is that something that you guys have to pay like two producers, or do you split the points, or is that?
I have no clue.
Okay. That
was all handled by management.
Oh, you didn't really fuck with the business end, huh?
No, I had no interest. I'm not the brightest bulb. That's above my pay grade.